I ultimately end up as a financial advisor, um,
Why?
because I didn't have money to start the businesses that I thought I was going to run.
Gotcha.
So, um, I knew these guys who ran Subways. In my head, I'm like, open up one Subway, open up another. Like all
Yeah.
of a sudden, you got a bunch, right?
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
like, but how much money do you need to start a Subway? You know,
Hmm.
$250,000 back then, right? I just really know this thing.
Hmm.
And I realized at one point I was driving and I thought, most people who are considered really smart
Hmm.
are only really smart in one thing. And it's just that one. This was years and years before I actually got good at Airbnb data. But that was a huge moment of realization for me because to be smart, it's really like you hone in on this thing and become smart at that
Hmm.
and other stuff. I thought to myself, I'm like, I want to hone in on this skill. I truly want to hone in on a skill. I got advice from somebody else that said, hey, if you want to start a business and doing something, you should work for somebody else doing that thing and then build a business out of it when you like build that skill. And so I go, okay, I'm going to find somebody that will hire me and let me just do Airbnb data all day. Where you go on there, it's bright, it's big, it shows everything off, windows are open, it looks clean, it looks good. That to me is still not good enough,
Hmm.
right? That is the bare minimum of getting the job done, but you're not going to excel in the Airbnb world if you do that. It's actually going to be hard to break a profit if you do that. Harder. So let's take it one step further.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using Newcalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
John Bianchi, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about STR research. We want to talk about all the things that or STR search, pardon me. We're talking about all the things that you're doing to help people sort of navigate the world of short term rentals. So,
Mhm.
thanks again for being here, bud.
I'm really looking forward to this, Mike. So thank you again. I really enjoy speaking with you.
So, where were you born?
Windsor, Ontario, which for Americans, it's literally right across the river of Detroit. So
Oh,
there's
there you go.
Detroit. Directly over the river is Windsor in Canada. And I always say it's a little suburb of Canada, but with a lot less crime. So
Did you grow up there?
I did. Yeah, I grew up in Windsor, and then I ended up meeting somebody and moved up 2 hours north to a little vacation town.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, that's where I grew up.
So, what was your favorite thing about growing up in Windsor?
Oh, it's a terrible place to grow up, in my opinion. It's a factory town where you're surrounded by cornfields and America. And so you don't really have like this like sort of just easy ability to drive around, go do stuff. There's not a lot going on in Windsor. But with that being said, the friends that I made from Windsor when I was growing up, they'll be my friends to the day I die.
Yeah.
The people there are good. You get to know them. So yeah, the people is really what mattered more than anything else.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
I It's got to be my dad.
Yeah.
My dad has a huge influence over me, more so now, I would say.
Yeah.
When I was younger, though, I probably didn't realize it as much, but yeah, definitely my dad.
When I was 18 years old, my dad said, "Right, one of these days, you're gonna see me as a genius."
Yeah, yeah.
He goes, "Right now, you're looking at me like I'm an idiot."
Yep.
Right.
I fully understand that now.
So
Yeah.
several years later, I had to call him and go, "Okay, you made genius level."
Yeah.
That
That's
was
it.
a big day for him.
It's my experience to a T, and I now have a 18-month-old, and I'm like, I'm not looking forward to the day where they think I'm an idiot.
That's
I'm
it
like,
right
just
there.
wait. Yeah.
That's it. It's coming, dude. It's coming.
Yep. It's how it works, right? I mean, it
It's
is what
how
it
it
is.
works. It
So,
does work.
yeah.
So question for you. So, what did your dad do for a living?
Yeah. So he worked at Ford.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Yep, in the factory. It's factory town, and you got Ford, GM, Chrysler, and those are the big three. And my dad worked at Ford, and you work on the line, and he'd been there long enough where he started doing other stuff and whatnot, and then he ended up actually retiring from that, and then he became a janitor for the city of Windsor, and so
Wow.
now he's 67, I think it is, and he's a janitor for the city.
Wow.
So yeah, and there's a
How
lot
long
more
has he
to
been
that.
with the city?
Like 10 plus years now, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
There's a whole lot more to that story, but I always love sharing that my dad was a factory worker and a janitor, and because there's so much more to it. But yeah, I'll get into it as we go.
So, well, you might as well.
Yeah,
What's because you just seriously, you just teased it, and I
I
can't.
know.
I just so you know, I call myself the king of the stupid question.
Yeah,
Okay, because I stay in curiosity and I stay out of judgment. So I don't prejudge questions, right? So
yeah.
we'd love to hear about the
Yeah.
story about your dad.
Yeah, I think my dad's one of the most successful people for what he wanted to be successful in. And in this world that we live in nowadays, it's all about career focus and what you can accomplish career wise. And I mean, I even feel myself sucked into that more than anything. Um, but my dad has 9 kids. So my mom and my dad have 9 kids, right? So I got 4 brothers, 4 sisters, and every single last one of us all fully love each other through and through, and like we consider ourselves best friends, and we always love to be able to hang out as much as we possibly can. And so my dad created a gigantic family where we all are not trying to rip each other's heads off, and he was the leader of that ship, and he did an amazing job of making that happen, right? So like there's that component where again, he's a factory worker and a janitor. People don't look at that and be like, oh, he lived a successful life. Then you look at the family he created. He's got 20 plus grandkids now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you look at that and you're like, that's success, right? And then
Yeah.
on top of that, kept food on the table every single day, kept a roof over our heads, like never really concerned about too many things. It's not like we were living like dirt poor by any means, but we weren't rich either. But we never felt it, I guess you could say. But then on top of that, he's also a very religious guy, and at the age of 50 something. I can't remember exactly what it was. He went in to become a deacon, which
Oh
is
wow.
like just below being a priest, right?
Yeah.
So you can become a deacon if you have a family, but you can't become a priest if you have a family.
Right.
And he started at like 50 something. And, he always talked about how he dropped out of computer school, like college when he was younger, right? He always I dropped out of that and went to bricklaying and, just got to work. And then he turns 50 and he goes, you know what, I'm going to go to school to become a deacon, and that's like a really hard thing to get into, and it's a 4-year degree, 4-year thing you have to do, right? And so he goes into it. I'm almost positive it was 52 people who started, but he ended. There was only 2 people who graduated, and he was one of those
Wow.
2. And so
Good for
he
him, man.
yeah, super difficult like program to like get out of and last, right? And so he comes out of that as one of the people, and now he does that, and like that's his thing. He'll do that to the day he dies, right? Now he gets to be a deacon in the church. He loves it more than anything, and do all these different things. So I just look at those 2 things as just like being gigantically successful,
Yeah.
right? The family, especially because I'm starting a family myself, and like
Yeah.
I love building businesses. It's like that is my favorite thing to do. But when I'm 50, like what am I going to be thinking, right? Even look at yourself. You mentioned, if you don't mind, you said you were 58, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you started this podcast 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's now 0.5% of podcasts. Like you're absolutely crushing it at your age. I look up to that. Like I look up to that a lot. I'm
I
like, that
still
is
have a hard time imagining that, by the way. Right?
imagining
Like I
what.
had to look at it. I had to look it up twice. Okay,
Mm.
just to make sure there wasn't something wrong with the cash or you know what I mean? It's like, what? Really?
You,
Right? I mean,
you're entertaining.
don't get me wrong. I'm very proud of what we've done. Okay,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're getting ready to do even bigger things. I mean, where we're headed, dude, you're not even going to recognize this place next year,
amazing
which is really, it's exciting. You know what I mean?
for
Um,
sure.
the thing is, I I don't know how to say this, but I'm super proud of what we've done, but I'm a little shocked by it too, right? Because like we just passed 4.5 million views, downloads, listens, right? I
Mhm.
mentioned to you we're in 66 countries worldwide, and we just turned 2 like 6 days ago. Um, I didn't imagine 2 years ago that this is where we would be. Okay. No way.
Yeah.
And the 0.5% thing, I found that out by accident.
Yeah.
I literally saw a copy of an email that was sent to a guest
Yeah.
that was invited by somebody else to be on the right?
Yeah.
And I went, that can't be right. That's got to be a typo, right?
Right.
So I literally looked, no joke, literally looked it up, and I went, no, that can't possibly be correct. So I hit refresh,
Yeah.
right? And I'm
It's
looking
not
at
going
it
away.
again, and I'm like, okay, all right, maybe it's true, you know.
I mean, yeah, there's stats where like the vast majority of podcasts don't get past 5, right? And it's like, and then you
98% don't make it past 2.
oh, there you go. Yeah,
And
yeah,
we're
yeah.
350 in. So the other day, somebody sent me a thing. Do you know that there's a 3.14% chance, 3.14% chance that we would get to 2 years old and 350 episodes?
See, so I find that
Unreal.
interesting. I do find that interesting. And then I think about like how data works, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
kind of data, right? And I get that stat, but if you are who you are, you know what I mean, and everything you've probably done with your life, you probably thought like, I'm going to do this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it. So in other words, your chances of failure were maybe like 3%, right? Right? Like the chances of you not doing what you're doing, because you have the personality where you're gonna push. I barely know you, but I
Yeah.
know enough stats of the fact that your podcast is where it's at the age that you're at, and a couple of things we talked about prior, and those type of things go hand in hand, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't accept failure. You figure out how to make it work, and that's why you're at where you're at. So that stat of like 3.14 is interesting, but you got to take into the human beings who are behind those stats and how many people stop so many things, right? And fail
Yeah.
so many times.
Well, I've
Yeah.
talked to so many podcasters that are former podcasters, right?
Right.
And it's like, and they're literally, so this one guy's been doing it for, I don't know, 15 years or something, and he's mentoring me, right? And I'm on the phone with him the other day because he's a friend of a friend, you know, right? I'm on the phone with him the other day, and he goes, and I said, you know, we're 21 episodes behind in editing, right? But I said, we're making up ground every day, you know, this and that. And he goes, you talk about that like it's a problem, right? He goes, do you have any idea how many podcasters panic because they have a weekly, we're distributing every day, by the way, 5 days a week. So
Oh, wow. Amazing.
we're literally releasing a podcast every day, 1:00 a.m. Eastern time, every day of the week. So Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And we're still behind. Okay. Now we're not behind as much, right? But he goes, you know how many podcasters panic because they have a weekly distribution and they don't have a guest for that week, right?
Yeah.
We're booked, no joke, into January. Okay.
Yeah,
So December's filled, November's filled, October's filled, September's filled. The only time you can book is January, and that's filling up quickly, you know? So it's, it's crazy, man. And it's incredibly humbling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But really exciting too, also.
Very like the perfect mindset to have for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
it's just the way, yeah.
I'm not as big about the podcasts as I am about the people. And I know you figured this out already. I just dig people. I get such a kick out of them, you know, and I hide it well, but I'm really into people. Anyway, so your dad, so by the way, tell your dad, thank you from me. I've been driving Ford trucks for years, like decades. Okay. I learned how to drive in a Ford F100 on a farm on my grandfather's farm in Oklahoma. And this was 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago now. I'm 58 years old. I learned to drive when I was 9.
Okay.
Yeah. So 49 years ago.
Yep.
And my grandfather was actually on a cover ad, the back cover of the Oklahoma Stockman magazine, because he had driven and owned Ford cars and trucks.
Yeah.
For 60 years, I think.
There you go.
So they were celebrating him.
I struggle to ever not buy a Ford.
Yeah.
I always think to myself, I'm like Henry Ford put food on my family's table forever. How can I?
Right?
Yeah, it's like it literally like they did that. So how could I drive something else? It just feels wrong. But
you won our loyalty, you know?
right, exactly. You fed me, Henry, for how many years, right?
That's
So
it. That's
yeah,
it.
especially when you sit in the spot of an entrepreneur and you know that like they work their butts off to make sure
Yeah.
that everyone on their team can feed their families. Like that's what goes through my head every day. So yeah, I don't know if I can drive anything else. Like
Yeah. I know the feeling, man. I know the feeling.
yeah.
So, so in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Yeah, television broadcasting was
Okay.
actually my favorite. Yeah, that's what my uncle worked for. There's a channel up in Canada called TSN, which was a sports channel,
Mhm.
and he worked for them. And I remember just thinking it was super cool. And I thought that I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do is like go and be a TV producer. And so in high school I did every extra elective I did that was like I learned how to do that. And then I did 1 year of television broadcasting in college, and I went, I'm out of here. I'm like, I can't do this. I don't like it. I don't like the editing. Like it got to a point where I was starting to realize like what I would really be doing. And I'm like, all I was thinking about was how do I turn that into a business? How do I turn that into a business? How do I, you know what I mean? Just kept asking myself that question. I'm like, maybe I should just go into business and you know what I mean? Like forget about this whole television broadcasting thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
let's just take the shortcut and just go do it, right?
yeah.
So, did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Probably my television broadcasting teacher. He was a
Yeah.
super nice guy. Yeah, he was a fun, like kind of nerdy guy, but with he was he wasn't ashamed of being nerdy. You know what I mean? Like he was
Mhm.
just who he was and everything. And yeah, he was really nice. He taught well. He cared. And I had him like 4 different times.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, he was a good
That's
guy.
awesome. Okay, so after high school, you go to work in television broadcasting. Did you go to school at all?
So I did the 1 year of television broadcasting, but dropped out.
Okay.
And I never really got a job in television broadcasting. We had a local channel that would film the hockey games. So like
Mhm.
not, you have the NHL and then below that you have the farm league. So like
Yeah.
I used to be a cameraman for those farm leagues when I was in high school. But I was just volunteering. And so I did that for 4 years. It was fun, but I just never could get good at like great at it. I
Mhm.
have this weird thing in my head where like if I do something, I want to try and figure out how to get great, and I'll put enough time to get past the learning curve, but I
Mhm.
want to get great at it. And yeah, like I have multiple experiences in my life where I really, really like I felt like I really tried, but I just I could feel myself not wanting to continue to get better, right?
Yeah.
After a certain period, which is interesting, but we can
Yeah.
yeah. So anyways.
It's just high standards, dude. It's, right?
Yeah, I noticed this is what the show's about, talking about my personal experience. So I'm gonna share. But I remember when I was growing up, I would get like whatever the average was, I would get. So like grades, I'd get whatever that bare minimum average was, I'd get the average. And if I did
Mhm.
something, I'd get the average. If I was practicing in something, I'd be the average person. Like I'd get the average speed. Like everything was average of what I did. And I remember thinking, like, man, am I just the most average person that exists out there? Where just like everything I do is just right in the middle. And I think that might have like done something to me where I'm like, well, how can I be above average,
Mhm.
right? I don't know. Maybe I'm connecting the dots, but I do remember having that thought back
No,
in the
it
day.
flipped a switch. I mean, it
Yeah.
happens, dude. It absolutely happens. You look at anybody who's accomplished anything in life, there's a time when they go, okay?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
time when it's like, okay, I'm not going to accept average anymore. I'm not
Right.
going to accept below average anymore, right? And it can
Yeah.
be anything. It could be a mentor, it could be a teacher, it could be, you know, it could be a neighbor, right? It could be anything, right?
Yeah.
It could be the father of one of your girlfriends, you know? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It just
Yeah.
it just people affect you in different ways, and some people just absolutely reach you. Like your dad is a guy that just reaches people. That's
Mhm.
why it's so important for him to be a deacon.
Yep.
You with me?
It
Like
yep.
it's a big, big, big deal.
Yeah.
So, and that's, and you're watching him sort of blaze the trail, so to speak, right?
Yep.
And you're watching dad continue to raise the bar,
Yep.
okay? And it
Exactly.
affects you. It affects you. I don't care who you are, it affects you, right?
It 100% does. And
Yeah.
I think about that for my daughter now too,
Yeah.
right? So, I make content,
Yeah.
and content's one of those. It's very, you're standing out naked in front of everybody when you make
Mhm.
content, and you're standing in front of them being like, hey, look, I tried doing this, and everyone's going to judge you, right? And so, I've thought to myself, I'm like, sometimes I slack on my content where I feel like I'm not truly putting the work into it that I should to, or the topics that I'm talking about. I'm like, I could go deeper on this. Like I could be more broad. I could get better advice. Like I constantly think about that. And then I think like, what's Remy going to think when she's watching dad's content? Like what is she going to think when she sees that and what I've been able to do? If I'm stuck at like 300 views for the next 10 years, and she's like, well, dad couldn't figure out how to do better, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
well, that doesn't sound good,
Yeah.
right? So there is something to that
There
where when you
is.
have somebody watching, you want to prove yourself so that they can also figure it out. They also have the confidence that they can do that too, right?
That's it.
Yeah, there's do that.
That's it, man. That's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing where you sort of apply your own pressure, and you're just pushing yourself. You're just
Yeah.
continually pushing yourself. So pretty cool. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something that's on your LinkedIn that I absolutely dearly love, by the way. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today. And we're back with John Bianchi. Before the break, we were talking about his dad's career at Ford with the city of Windsor and all the amazing things that your dad has done in the past, becoming a deacon in the church, that kind of thing. And really your life story, like where you were just after high school, right? So after high school, by the way, I promise this, in your LinkedIn, in the about section, most people go into this big, long diatribe about who they are. By the way, it takes me 30 minutes to introduce myself, just so you know, right? I've been called loquacious. I have.
Okay.
I
don't even, you'd have to define that word for me. I
but
apologize.
I've been called worse.
There you go.
So loquacious is talkative, basically. It's a fancy way of saying you're talkative.
The best compliment to a podcaster, is it
Yeah,
not?
see,
Yeah.
right? So on your LinkedIn in the about section, and I dearly love this, is a quote. And the quote is, wealth comes from choices, not chances. That's it.
Yeah.
That's your entire introduction to the world, right? I just absolutely love that. And then the other thing that you mentioned was data is your life. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Airbnb data is my whole thing. I love that. I love that. So
what's funny, real quick before you jump in?
Go ahead.
I barely use LinkedIn, and so I completely forgot what I wrote there. And so like it's my favorite, like
and here I am putting it out there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Awesome.
I love that. That's so cool. Okay. So thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I barely use LinkedIn. I love that. So after broadcasting, you decide to go in a different direction. Where do you go?
Okay, so I ultimately end up with I ultimately end up as a financial advisor.
Why?
Because I didn't have money to start the businesses that I thought I was going to run.
Gotcha.
So I knew these guys who ran Subways. In my head, I'm like, open up one Subway, open up another. Like all of a sudden you got a bunch, right? And it's like, but how much money do you need to start a Subway? $250,000 back then, right? Something like that. And
wow.
I just was like, man, I was broke as a joke. I've been broke for a very long time. And so I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that, right? And so then eventually I come across this guy, and it's this whole, I don't want to call it a Ponzi scheme, but it's a recruiting tactic where these life insurance companies, right? They pull you in with this idea of being a financial advisor, and they're like, yeah, you build up your book of business over time, and you can make commissions along the way to pay the bills, but eventually you get to a point where you have such a big book of business, it just kind of pays for itself, right? that is true, but the company I worked for, or I went to like build my own book of business, they're just selling life insurance. Yeah, that's all they're doing. They're just selling life insurance, but they're selling you this dream that you're their financial advisor. Really, they're not educating you on like how to be an amazing financial advisor and how to do everything properly. They're just like, sell life insurance and see if you can get some people to give you their money, even though they don't teach you how to do it properly. Anyways, the whole purpose of this is that I started off as this financial advisor within this like really large corporation. And they have a lot of like training and coaching and get you to this place. Started with like 16 plus people, ended with just me and this other guy, right? Wow. And but I knew every single person that was in this company was just a scumbag, and I hated it. They were liars. They would do whatever they had to do to get the sale. They did not care. They would sell like worse products or more. It drove me nuts. I could not stand it, and they were not true financial advisors. And so I was obviously actively looking like, okay, like I want to keep doing this, but like I need to get out of here.
But properly, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Ultimately ended up with being essentially a junior associate for another guy who managed $100 million. It wasn't set up as a junior associate. I ultimately took over a portion of his business, which was like all of his smaller clients. I managed $10 million and 200 plus clients. I was 22 or 23. I can't remember the exact age at the time, but I was younger doing this, and it felt like it was going in the right direction for the business if I really want to truly be like a great financial advisor. It was really, I always look back at it, have my name on the door. I remember thinking like, oh, it's so cool. You're young 20s, you have your name on the door. Had my own assistant, had a guy who was managing 90 million beside me who was teaching me. I was like, I felt like I did a good job of like getting to that point. And I pushed for, probably another year and a half with him of trying to be good at this, right? And what I realized, because if you want to be a good financial advisor, you really got to be able to understand all the different tax scenarios in your head and financial advising options. And there's so many complexities to it. And once you get to legalese within my brain, you might as well be speaking Chinese. Like it just like it goes in one ear, out the other. I was trying to make sense of how all these things could sort of work together in tandem. And if I add this, but I also add that in, and we combine it with this other additional account and option and investment and tax strategy of how you have this like really well put together portfolio. I just couldn't do it. I tried studying for it. I tried going through these things. I just couldn't do it. And I was like, I remember looking at my business partner. He was 45 at the time, been doing it for 20 plus years, built up a gigantic business, was doing really well. And he loved it. Every day came in and loved it. He would have the same conversations over and over and over and again with every different client. And he loved it. And I remember thinking to myself, even at the time where I sat across the table with him to tell him I was leaving, I sat there and I said, you love this. I'm like, I look at you and you're just ecstatic to be here. And he just smiled. He's like, yeah. He's like, I do. Like, I just love it. I'm like, I don't, right? Like, I just don't. Yeah. And so I left I sold back my piece to him and ultimately went and did something different that I had been lining up for like months at that time. Which I guess I could just jump into if you want me to jump into it from there. Yeah.
Jump into it. That's what we do, baby. We jump in.
All right. So
we splash everybody because we're in the puddle. You know what I mean? Yeah. But we just jump in.
I just didn't want to go on a half-an-hour monologue, about all this stuff.
We're all right.
Yeah. So I get to a point where I realize like I'm not going to do this for the next 30 years. But I actually feel super lucky because most financial advisors, it takes them about 10 years to get to that point of managing that amount of capital. And then they have kids and mortgage and everything. And they're like, I can't leave it.
Golden handcuffs. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many financial advisors in that situation. And I feel fortunate I had none of that. And I was able to just be like, all right, I'm going to go take a risk over here. Yeah. And so while I was still doing the financial advising, I actually started renting out my spare bedroom on Airbnb.
Oh.
Yeah. I had random people living with me every single day. It was a fun experience. At that time, I loved it. Nowadays, I would hate it. But at that time, I loved it. And
you were young. You were you were learning. It was something new.
Yeah. Everyone. I didn't care. It didn't bother me. So. Anyways, it's super interesting because it was such an easy way to like learn about Airbnb because I didn't mind people staying there. There was no risk. I was going to pay my mortgage or my rent at the time, or I could make some money on Airbnb and they could pay for it. And then ultimately, it got to the point where I was making more money than my rent, and I was like, "This is cool." I was like, "That's cool." And so I started deep diving Airbnb to learn that there's a whole world of Airbnbs. There's people building entire businesses and people making millions and different strategies and different ways of doing it.
Scaling and the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. And then I came across the data platform and my mind just like blew up. It was so Airbnb Data was it's called AirDNA, and it tells you how much every single Airbnb makes in the world.
Wow.
And you could, if you bought the subscription, you could see this Airbnb over here is making 100,000, this one over here is making 50,000, but yet they could be the exact same sized home with the same 4 bedrooms, same neighborhood, same everything, but one's making way more. And I have my
what's the secret?
Oh, that's my whole thing. That's my whole the understanding the secret's my whole thing. But but yeah. So, anyways, I see this whole platform and it blows my mind. And this is, I go tell my dad about this. I remember I go, Dad, look at this. You can literally see, how much all these Airbnbs are making, and he could care less. He was just like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's fun. But I remember being the most exciting thing I've ever seen.
Right.
I think it was most exciting because I understood coming from that financial investing world, right? That if you could know how much something could make, it's a lot easier to figure out what the return would be. I put $100,000 in, what do I get back out, right?
Right.
And I always thought about like Subways or McDonald's. You never really know exactly how much those are going to make when you first open up. You have like a general idea, but one location compared to the other could be a night and day difference, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so like there's this huge risk that you go. So being able to see these Airbnbs, I was like, well, if I could figure out how much a place is going to make, then I could get an investment and put the numbers in a spreadsheet, and we're kind of good to go. And so anyways, ultimately ended up opening up 2 locations while still being a financial advisor. Realized that there was, I was getting a hang of this. I was figuring it out. And I went out and raised $250,000 from these guys who own Subways. Ultimately only used like 125 of it. But once I raised that money, I turned to my financial advising business partner and I was like, I'm going away. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to take off to do this thing. Whatever. And I did that and head down to Florida to go make that happen. Florida didn't work out, ended up in Chicago, and then built it up in Chicago, built up a business out in Chicago.
Why do you think Florida didn't work?
Lack of understanding of regulations and where people would be willing to go. So yeah, the first location that I ever went to is now a place I know like the back of my hand. So, and I've helped invest millions of dollars into like the exact location where I first started. But so Florida has these on the Gulf side, right? On the west side, has all these islands that are kind of like right off the coast.
Yeah.
And that's where you have like world-renowned beaches. They're absolutely beautiful. But the regulation there is extraordinarily strict. And then I was renting at the time. I was doing a different kind of model, which I can get into. I'm not a huge fan of it nowadays, but I was renting and you couldn't rent anything down there.
Yeah.
They're already all Airbnbs or the rent was through the roof and it didn't work. But I realized that if you actually just go like 20 minutes back, then all of a sudden there starts to become a bunch of opportunity. Yeah. And it starts to work. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I didn't know.
Like a saturated market kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I just didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And it took me years to even figure it out and get to that point. But you look back at it, you're like, oh, I was 20 minutes away from making it work down there. But ultimately,
you learned a lot.
For sure. Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And you took that knowledge and you went to Chicago and you made it work.
That's the only way that I've ever learned how to do anything. That's the only way I've ever gotten to the answer is just by trying and failing. And it's
you're either going to succeed or you're going to learn. That's it.
That's it. Those are the only 2 options, right? And so, yeah, I learned a lot at the beginning. Cool. Better way of saying failing.
So how did you make Chicago work when Florida didn't?
Yeah, so Chicago, significantly easier to make it work.
Why?
So regulations was the first piece, right? So that was my whole. I was like, wherever I'm going to go next, I'm going to make sure that these regulations are going to work for me. And Chicago essentially said, you can do Airbnb, just follow our rules. And so as long as I follow the rules, I could do it. And so they had these different things that we could and could not do. And so when I went to Chicago, I knew which properties I could get and which ones I couldn't get, right? As an example, there's a ton of 4 flats in Chicago, right? So 4-unit apartment buildings, but they each have their own floor.
Yeah.
And you can only one of those could be an Airbnb. The other 3 had to be long-term rentals, right? Otherwise, it just turns into a little mini hotel.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece. Regulations were good, whereas in Florida it was not. And then the next thing is that
and it's getting worse in Florida, by the way.
Oh yeah.
right? They're
Well,
tightening up like there's no tomorrow, in addition to what you found when you were down there.
correct. Yeah, I can get into that. That's a whole other conversation. But Chicago has,
Of course it is.
yeah, that one will be, we'll have another podcast just talk about that.
That's right. That's right.
It won't be interesting, but we can talk about it.
You'll be interested.
Yeah, true, true. So Chicago is a renter market, right?
Yeah.
So because I was renting at the time, like everyone rents in Chicago. There's thousands and thousands of places to rent, but in
Yeah.
Florida, and specifically the place I was going, there's barely any.
Right.
Yeah, right. So you get that combination of those two things, and then Chicago just had a really good demand.
Yeah.
Very, very, they had strong demand, and you could still find places that you could rent out where they'd still be able to turn a profit. And I found it. You know what I mean? Like I studied it. I found it. I was like, okay, right here, if I get this will work. And I went and did it, and it worked. And I got another one, and it worked. Got another one, and it worked. And so I was able to decipher Chicago to figure out that the math actually worked. I looked into a bunch of other cities, and the math just wasn't mathing. And so
you weren't buying, you were renting them and then turning around and renting them back out, like subletting them almost as Airbnbs.
correct. Yeah, it's a model called rental arbitrage, which I don't recommend anymore ever.
Yeah.
It was what I was sold on. Again, it's when you don't have a lot of money, it's an option to try to make it work. Because you buy a place, it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you rent a place and just furnish it, it can cost you like $10,000 to $20,000, right? So a lot easier to get your foot through the door. But it's a really, really, really bad business model long term. You don't own anything. The furniture. Okay, so you don't own the place. So the landlord can kick you out when they want to kick you out, essentially, right? There's rules and stuff, but for the most part, you don't own it.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is that you buy all this furniture, which is worth nothing as soon as you buy it. You buy a brand new couch, good luck reselling it for even close to what you bought it for, right? And then specifically for Chicago, we were like on top of other people. So the neighbors hate you, which makes it even harder. And then you have so many expenses. So you have your mortgage, you have your cleaning bill, and your utilities, you have to buy the soaps and shampoos. So like on an annual basis, you have to make over X amount. So for each one of my properties, I had to make more than $70,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so the reason that business model also is not very good is because a vast majority of people don't understand Airbnb data well enough to know where that arbitrage exists, where you can have $70,000 of expenses and still walk away with and still make $90,000 to profit $20K on that property. Right. It's super hard to find those deals, and a lot of people do a bad job of finding them.
So is that typical? Like, do you typically gross 90,000 and your expenses are 70? Is that a typical?
That was for Chicago.
Okay.
But for Airbnbs, like if you're buying them, my company is typically able to find somewhere between 10% to 20% cash on cash. That's our general range. It's better to say 8 to 10 on the low, 17 to 20 on the high. Tends to be where we fall.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all. But it's also very hard to do at scale.
That's why it's not bad, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't want to say it's the norm by any means, but we've been able to do that on repeat by analyzing the data and all these different things. It's super hard. Like I have a business helping people find properties that can do that. And the only reason the business exists is because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
fills a need. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyways, Chicago, getting properties, rental arbitrage model, not a fan of it. There's another business model since we're on it, and I know you're curious, so I want to share.
I'm very curious.
Yeah. So what eventually happened to me in Chicago was that I'm doing all these rental arbitrage deals where I've got all this debt that I got to cover, and I'm trying to make it work. And then I have one of my landlords who was managing one of her properties. Sorry, I was living in her property. She tells me, hey, I got another home right down the street. She's like, if I furnish it, will you just manage it? And I don't know why. I just didn't click in my head. Like, yeah, you can manage other people's properties, you know what I mean, for a percentage. And I realized that I didn't have to buy the furniture to get it in. She was going to take that risk. And I didn't have to pay the rent. I didn't have to pay the utilities. I didn't have to pay anything. She was going to take that risk. And all I had to do was just run it and manage it. And I could start it for $0. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll do. And so I never did another arbitrage deal after that. And I only took on management contracts, let other people take the risk. if they thought their home had the opportunity and the potential, and I would try and help them work through the data, be like, hey, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And then I would run it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a good friend that owns multiple property management companies.
Yeah.
And that's his thing is, these people allow us to manage their properties, and we have no risk in this thing. We're a service company, right? And, we're so unbelievably blessed to have people trust us to manage their assets for them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the coolest thing, man. You listen to him and you're like, I want to be in property management. Right?
Yeah, then you start doing it.
It's kind of like when you went to Dad and you're like, Dad, look at this. Look at how
Right.
cool this is. Your dad's like, sure, that's great. Right.
So
Right.
this is what you just said. What you just said there is so important for people to understand that everybody is hyper excited about a thing.
Yeah.
It's very rare that they're hyper excited about multiple things.
Right.
So like when you just said that, like I have zero interest in managing properties, right?
Yeah.
Like he's excited though.
Right.
He's like, amazing opportunities. People let us do this, right? And like I'm sure.
Well, he's inspired, dude. Like he talks about it like it's the gift that right? It's and you're just like, wow, because everybody wants to be that happy, right? Everybody wants to feel that fulfilled. Okay.
Right.
Spend 30 seconds with him and you want to be in property management. I mean, it's just, and by the way, property management to me seems like a boring job or boring business or whatever, right? But not to them. To he and his brother, it's the coolest thing ever,
Being a property manager sounds like a living hell for me.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely
for most people that know the business and know, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's the way they feel too.
But how your friend feels about property management is how I feel about Airbnb data.
Yeah.
It's just like acquisitions, Airbnb data, getting like turning like this thing that is like not very exciting that nobody can really like figure out if it's going to be good or not. And I'm like, that's a winner. And then bringing it to life, oh, that's heaven on earth.
So there's a running theme here. I don't know if you've ever sat back and looked at this, and if you haven't, it's okay, because we tend to do this, right?
Right. Yeah.
Every single move you've done, every single thing you've done in this entire journey has been all about how you can help. How you can help people avoid that mistake, how you can help people make more money, how you can help people manage their funds, how you can, you know what I mean? Everything you've done, not necessarily everything you've done has been your favorite thing to do, but it's all been around your heart and your desire to help. And dude, I'm acknowledging you for this. Okay. I think this is a big deal because it's a big, and by the way, I know you don't use LinkedIn. Okay. But you can see it in your LinkedIn. Airbnb data is my whole thing, period. Right.
Yeah.
And it's about choices, right? It's not about chances. It's about choices. Okay. Right. That's you. That's how you roll. And I think a big part of that came from your dad, because your dad loves people. Okay. And he loves being able to be of service to them. And it's you, except you're him, except in a different space. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
I just think that's the coolest thing ever.
Don't
ever lose that. I don't think
I appreciate
you know what I mean, right? That's
very
really
much.
Dude, that rocks. Seriously.
That is, I genuinely appreciate you taking a moment to share that. That is something that I have noticed about myself.
Good.
And I can share, I've actually built my business around that.
Yeah.
So the
you can tell. I mean,
yeah, the STRSearch company that I have, where we help people find properties.
Mm-hmm.
I have created, as of today, 4 different courses that teach people my data process.
Yeah.
And my entire business is built on the fact that I gave all of that away for free.
Yeah.
The first one was 2 hours long. Then the next 2 were like 3 hours long. And then the fourth one was 40 hours long. Mm-hmm. After I found 120 properties and every single last one was profitable, I sat down and went, okay, how did I do that? What's every single step? How do we go through? How do you find a market? How do you build out a buy box? How do you hunt for the property there? How do you, figure out what the revenue is going to be? And I just gave it all the way for free. And it lives now on my website, 100% free. I don't even ask for an email. It's just there. Go through it. If you want to go through it, you can do it yourself. You don't need me. But if you want to hire me, you have the option.
Right. What's
and like
what's the website's address?
STRSearch.com.
Okay, real quick, we're in 66 countries worldwide, like I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
What does STR stand for? Because not everybody knows. Not everybody.
Yeah. Short-term rental.
Right. So STR is short-term rental, right?
Yeah.
And STR search is your search. You can search, right? Learn how to search
Yeah.
short-term rental opportunities and figure out what's a absolute dud and what's a winner.
Exactly.
Right. Instead of just blindly going out and like we had a gentleman on that specializes in vacation properties, right? Second homes, that kind of thing. And he's in Denver. He's amazing, absolutely amazing guy. You should meet him. You guys should meet.
Okay.
And one of the things that he talked about was his single biggest like he comes at it the same way you do. His single biggest frustration is people come out to his area. They'll rent an Airbnb. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but they rent an Airbnb and they fall in love with the property. They fall in love with the area. They fall in love with this romantic idea of being on vacation forever kind of thing, right? And they go out and they buy a vacation rental.
Yep.
And they do it without doing any research whatsoever or talking to somebody like him or talking to somebody like you, right? Where you could literally go, okay, stop, just for a second. Just for a second, pretend you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll, right?
Exactly what you just stated is what I have been trying to prevent for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
Everything that I've been trying to do, the mission of my company, it is truly our mission, is to ensure that nobody buys an unprofitable property. Right? Because the amount of people that I've spoken with who have bought a bad property and say, Airbnb sucks, Airbnb's dead, this doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're wrong.
Right.
I'm living proof that I'm right because all the properties we've helped acquire so far have all been profitable, right?
Yeah.
250 plus properties, right? So yes, exactly. That's why I give the content away for free. That's why
it's frustrating, right?
So frustrating. I feel so bad because I know.
The thing is we buy based on emotion. We justify based on logic. Okay. But you're looking at this from a logical standpoint going, stop, just let me help. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Or like the simplest thing, like just watch a little bit of my content.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. And then go do that. Right. Yeah. Because if you have no idea what you're doing and you go and try and do it, the chances of you being successful are so slim, it's not even funny.
Yeah. And it's a shot in the dark. Like you're like putting money on a roulette, on red or whatever. It's 17 red. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, dude, please. Yeah. Right.
It's not even those would actually be good odds. Putting it on 17, that's a good odd of hitting that in comparison to Airbnbs.
Yeah, and roulette odds are terrible, man.
And they are for sure. I'm telling you.
So sorry to get into the gambling thing, but it's a lot like gambling, right? It's they're just going in blind. And like people sit down it drives me nuts. People sit down at a blackjack table and they know nothing about blackjack. Well, the people that are sitting there that have played blackjack before, they get frustrated with you because you're taking their cards and you know what I'm saying? And it's like,
I don't play back.
I'm the guy. I'm the guy that so I go to Vegas and I go there for a buddy's party and my wife says, you have this amount of money.
Yeah.
Right. So she gives me $200 to gamble with. Great. So I take the $200 and put it down. He hands me 4 chips. I'm like, where are all the chips? And he just, he's completely disgusted with me. He looks over, he points over at the sign on the right side of the thing, and it says $50 minimum. So like, I'm good. I'm like, you guys better help me because when I'm done with this, I'm done for the weekend, right? And so they're trying to help me, and I'm so not a gambler, dude. I'm so bad.
Yeah.
And literally, I go through like, I don't know, 6 hands or some crazy thing, and I'm done, and they're like, go to the pool, go do something, right?
Yeah. I'm the same as you. Went to Vegas.
Oh, this is bad.
I went to Vegas, didn't bet anything. My friends wanted to do like a all bet together thing. I just gave them $20. They went and did. I went and did something else. Like,
I worked too hard for my money to just blow it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
couldn't agree more.
It's just crazy. Yeah.
Anyway,
so let's talk about, so STRSearch.com is the website, STRSearch.com. And there's literally hours and hours and hours of content that people can get for free They don't have to give you their information or any of that. They can literally get it, download it. I mean, there's what, 50 hours, 40 some hours?
I condensed it, so it's not enough people were going through all 40. So I condensed it to the most important stuff. It's now turned into a 7-day Airbnb data challenge, and every day is about an hour long. So
Okay,
about
so 7 hours. Okay, yeah. So that's not too terribly intimidating, but it's based on 40 plus hours of content, right? So, I mean, that's a big deal to be giving that away to everybody. Okay. So, so where are we in your journey? Are we up
Yeah.
are we up to present day? No, not yet.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Nope. We're in 2020.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
in 2020.
So COVID.
Yep.
Great.
Oh yeah. COVID was amazing for the hospitality business in
Oh, I
city.
can imagine.
Yeah, it was great. So pretty well March, April is more closer to March, or sorry, closer to April. Every single last booking that I had for my Airbnbs are gone. Everything, all gone. And
But you still have to pay rent.
yeah, still have to pay rent, exactly. And so that was the most interesting time of one of the most interesting times of my life for sure. And I had to figure out, how do I get all these places rented long term within the next 10 days?
Mhm.
And what do I do about these contracts that I have? Do I open them back up? Do I close them? What do I do about the property management contracts that I have, and all of these people who are, also in the same situation as me, but they're on the hook for the mortgage. Um, I had a cleaning business at the time too, 7 cleaners. Like, what do I do about all them?
Mhm.
It was not fun at all. And ultimately, what ended up happening was every single last Airbnb got shut down, and I got all of the places rented. I didn't have a ton of money saved up because we were about to go into our uh, profitable time of the year, where we were about to make like $250,000 in profit, and over the next like 4 or 5 months. And we didn't. So you know what I mean? I was like, we just didn't. And it was tough. Yeah. So it was really, really tough. But I ended up talking to this guy, and he said he wanted to just buy all my contracts. He had a business in Detroit. He wanted to expand in Chicago. He's like, can I buy all of your contracts? And so we go back and forth in negotiations for a whole period of time. Turns out this guy is the scum of earth, like one of the worst possible people. I don't learn it in the moment, but like it took me time. I'm super cautious of people nowadays, solely because of this one human being. But ultimately, we ended up selling the business to him, but it just wasn't as it should have been. And I walk away. So like I ended up, walking away from the business, walking away from everything, going back to like my hometown. I actually did a bunch of traveling during COVID when nobody else was traveling, which is kind of fun. Fun fact, I was the Great Pyramid of Giza. I went into that, and I was myself and my tour guide were the only people in there while I was in there. So I went, and I was in the King's Chamber by
Like having the
myself.
place all to yourself.
I literally had the Great Pyramid of Giza to myself. It was wild.
Unbelievable.
So, anyways, so it failed. That was tough. You know what I mean? You build something up, and it was really, really tough to like have it fail. And then I'm trying to figure out, where do I go from here?
Mhm.
So I did a whole bunch of travel, went to a bunch of different places, and during that time frame, I would just try and learn, like, what is it that I want to do now? Like, what is pulling my attraction? What's getting me excited, kind of deal. And I actually thought it was going to be renewable energy. Like, I kept like diving down this idea of renewable energy, and like, how can you do that? How can you build stuff around energy? Energy affects everybody. How can I like figure out a way to build something around energy? Um, uh, I did that. I just ended up working for a energy startup for 8 months, and it got to the point where I was like, nope, this isn't for me whatsoever. But so it's an interesting sort of time frame, right? Where it's, I felt like I had done so much to get where I was, and then fell on my face. And as an entrepreneur, to get a job is like the worst thing in the world, right? And so I did get that job because I, wanted to pay the bills, but at the same time, I kept teaching people about Airbnb data, because I had that course out there, and then I had people who were reaching out to me for help, and then I would help them, then they would refer me somebody else, right? And it turned into this thing where I'm like, hey, like, I can analyze it all. I would analyze the properties for them for $100, $150, right? And it's like, I'll kind of rip it apart and tell you what I think it's going to make based off of this whole process. And then that kind of like just kept building. And I had this whole time frame where I just was so done with Airbnb. It's called host fatigue. It's a general thing in like the Airbnb community. They call it host fatigue, where you're over it.
But it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Because I know people that are in the Airbnb business, like literally right now,
Yeah.
and they're as fatigued as they get, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, they're just literally going, what do I do? Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got like, if you get somebody else to manage it, you lose all of your revenue. If
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's a whole conundrum.
Well,
That
there's
just,
your reputation,
yeah.
there's your ratings, yeah, right. And there's this struggle to try to make people happy.
Hmm.
Right.
And failing
And
at that over and
yeah,
over
well,
again.
it's you do the best you can. You do everything you can, right?
Yeah.
There's just some people you're just not going to make happy. It's just,
Ever.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's crazy too, because it's like, there's something else going on with them. That this is not the
Correct.
Airbnb manager's fault, right? The
Yeah.
owner's fault. It's something else. You just
Yeah.
can't put your finger on it because you don't know them. So
And it's that, it's the, it's the same messages on repeat over and over again. It's the same, little things, and then, something breaks and you lose profit because of it, and you're like going back, and then just your cleaner screws up. You got to deal with that, and it's like you're
Mhm.
constantly, now mind you, like anything you do has issues and problems. Like what
Mhm.
you do with your podcast is going great, you love it, but there's still headaches that you got to deal with day in and day out. It's the fact that not everybody loves those headaches, like we were talking about
Mhm.
earlier, right? So anyways, that's a whole other thing too, right? A lot of tangents we can get on here. But but
So 2020 goes away. You're
yeah,
searching.
yeah.
You're
Yep.
looking at renewable energy. You're thinking that's where you're headed. Where do you go from there?
Well, I was on the side helping people,
Yeah.
and it got to a point where I had this realization. I'm like, I do love Airbnb. I just
Mhm.
love the data side.
Yeah.
I really enjoy this data component more than hosting, more than that stuff.
Why?
I had an act for it. I had like a,
Can you
yeah,
dig a little more for me?
for sure. So I was wondering when I was going to bring this up on this. I had this thought like three times. Like, I wonder if I'll be able to explain this.
We're
I was
going there.
Yeah, I was driving one day. So by the way, I'm not a smart guy to my friends, right? Like, I feel like your friends are like the best reflection of like who you are, and they kind of know all of the components of you. And I got super close friends, and I don't think any of them are looking at me like, "Oh, John's a genius," right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to Airbnb data, and people talk to me about Airbnb data, like they're like, "Holy shit, man, you really know your stuff. Like, you're a really smart guy." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I just really know this thing."
Mhm.
And I realized at one point I was driving, and I thought most people who are considered really smart
Mhm.
are only really smart in one thing. And it's just that one. This was years and years before I actually got good at Airbnb data. But that was a huge moment of realization for me, because to be smart, it's really like you hone in on this thing and become smart at that,
Mhm.
and other stuff you're just average at,
Mhm.
right? Or you're okay at, or some stuff you're just dumb at. When it comes
Right.
to legalese, I'm dumb. I'm not
Yeah.
good at all when it comes to that. And so, anyways, realization that that was the thing. And then I've read books that talk about how obsession is like a whole, it's like a superpower. You know what I mean? When you're obsessed with something and you can just like really like sit on it for hours and hours and hours a day, or months and months and months, or years and years and years, that compound effect is kind of a crazy thing that'll, you never really know where it's going to lead.
Malcolm
Yeah.
Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers about this.
Yes, he did. Yep, he did. Yeah, I believe I've listened to it. There's another book. I'm trying to see if I can see it on my bookshelf here, but there's another book. I can't remember the guy's name. I want to figure it out before the end of this, but it's, in my opinion, if you don't know what you want to do or where you want to go, there is no greater book to read to figure out like the path that you should go on to
Mhm.
figure that out. I'll figure it out, but so, anyways, I knew there was something about this Airbnb data stuff that just intrigued me. I could sit, I could listen, I could look into it. I knew I was understanding it better than other people. I knew that like it came kind of easy to me to a certain extent, where I was like interpreting it, and I could spot things, and then it excited me like crazy. So there was this huge dopamine rush that was happening with Airbnb data, because it's truly, the job is find the needle in the haystack. And then I would jump into the haystack and try and find it, then find the needle and go, I found it, right? I'd be like, I found the needle. And finding that needle was so exciting to me because it was a needle that made money. And I was like, look at, I found this needle. Now I can make $20,000 a year. I wonder if I can find another one.
See,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to disagree with you
Okay.
respectfully.
Yeah, no, go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
This is
intrigued.
your life and you're your own person. Okay. But I'm telling you from where I am,
Yeah.
the dopamine comes from the relief on the other end of the phone or the other end of the line with the person that you just saved,
Yeah.
the person you just helped. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where your dopamine comes from. It never comes from the data. The data is just a tool. It
Yes.
comes from your ability. I'm telling you, man, this is your dad, 1000%. Okay.
Right.
It
Yep.
comes from your ability to take something that you know inherently and you literally have spent 10,000 plus hours working on. Okay.
Mhm.
And you're able to help people navigate through this maze. Okay.
Yep.
And you get them to a place to where they're not going to lose their shirt, kind of like you did before. Not that
Yes.
you lost your shirt, but you know what I mean, right?
I know
You had
exactly
some
what
real
you mean.
frustration that you dealt with. And
You
one of the
just
things that got you excited, I think, about data was what you could do with the data in terms of your ability to help other people. That's where I think the dopamine comes from.
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. It's just how you're
Because
built, dude. You can't help yourself.
I genuinely cannot.
Yeah.
So there's we have tons of clients, right?
Yeah.
And everyone on my team that works for me knows that I will freak out if a property is not performing.
Yeah.
If it's not doing well, like it drives me absolutely nuts. Everybody knows it. And so you're right, because the data is the one component
Mhm.
that is like, okay, this property has potential, but now you got to set it up.
Mhm.
You got to set it up the right way. Then you got to make sure that you actually take the photos the right way. Then you got to make the listing perfect. Then you got to get the revenue right. Then you got to manage it properly. Then you make money.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have with our clients, perfect example of a lady who I've just been going back and forth with. Her property was not hitting the numbers that we wanted to be able to hit in that moment, and they weren't getting bookings for a reason, and they had made some certain tweaks, but it was driving me nuts because she would email me and be like, "We still haven't had a booking in like 2 weeks." And not even an inquiry. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And so I then dive into her property, figure out this. And I'm like, you got to get this photographer out to your house as soon as possibly can. The photos is going to make the world of difference for this. The guy, luckily, this photographer, world-class Airbnb photographer, is down the street, which I didn't know. He literally lives in the same area, had an availability the next day. So he shows up the next day, takes all the photos. Since then, they've gone up in 32% in occupancy, and they've made over 20. I think they're actually closer to $30,000 now since then, and that's a 3-week period from photos to getting set up. And they also changed one other thing with their pricing too, and completely turned around. They then emailed me, go, "Hey, we're ready for our next property. How do we get going?" And that right there, that email coming through, that is my greatest dopamine, because it goes, you did the job, you didn't screw them over, the property's working, the data worked out, the process worked. Now they're going to go for another one, and we get that all the time.
So I know the answer to this because I'm in real estate, but I'm going to ask you. Okay, I'm not an Airbnb. Just full disclosure, I don't have any Airbnbs or any of that. But it does not surprise me to know that photos are a big flipping deal.
Huge.
Talk about it for a second, because it's really, well, you tell us.
Okay, so photos are how you sell your product. Your product's the Airbnb. If you were to think about booking a Holiday Inn, right? You go to the website of a Holiday Inn. You know what? Let's not use Holiday Inn because they're so
They're
standard.
terrible.
You
They're
trust
terrible.
they're still good. They're good. They're bad, but
Well,
it's Holiday Inn.
okay. Let me back up. I shouldn't say terrible. Let me back up. I shouldn't say terrible. I should say they don't have the most attractive photos of their rooms available online.
The rooms are not even attractive.
Well, but let's,
right.
I mean, honestly, yeah, and it's, and by the way, you can say that about a lot of different hotels. It's not just them. And I'm not picking on them. I'm not.
Yeah.
I love Holiday Inn. What I'm saying is, and we've stayed at a lot of Holiday Inns in my life where we were thoroughly happy. It's really about the presentation, right? And it's really about I mean, and you can say this about a lot of different hotels where you go on their website and their photos are just what, right?
Exactly. So that's what I was going to explain is I didn't want to use Holiday Inn as an example because you'll stay at a Holiday Inn because they're Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
They have their brand recognition, right?
Yeah.
You'll go to McDonald's because you know what you're getting.
Yep.
If you were to take a motel on the side of the road, not a chain motel whatsoever, and they got a website, and if you imagine that on that website they have iPhone photos showing off their motel, and it looks creepy and gross, you're not spending $1,000 a night to stay there.
Right.
You're not even booking the place in the first place because you don't have the confidence from somebody who's online to believe that that's going to give you the experience you want unless you can't afford anything else.
Right.
It's the only time it gets booked. I can't afford anything else, therefore I'm going to go for that.
Yeah.
That's not where we want to live. We don't want to live in the world of I can't afford anything else, therefore I'm going to go for this option.
Right.
And so you take that extreme example of like this motel, dingy, you just get creeped out. Now take like a regular Airbnb or a house, and you have also those same iPhone photos taken at night. Doesn't look good in there. It's hard, it's hard to tell and see. You look at that, you're not feeling confident. Like you don't. It doesn't translate confidence to the individual who's about to book the place unless they can't afford anything else. But then you take another step and you go, okay, well, what if we get photos that look like the average Zillow listing, right? Where you go on there, it's bright, it's big, it shows everything off, windows are open, it looks clean, it looks good. That to me is still not good enough, right? That is the bare minimum of getting the job done, but you're not going to excel in the Airbnb world if you do that. It's actually going to be hard to break a profit if you do that. Harder. So let's take it one step further. Well, what's more than the photos you see on Zillow? They all look good for the most part, especially the ones that are done right. So like, what's more than that? Well, what's more than that is a photo that can evoke motion, right? A photo that when you look at it, you can quite literally feel yourself or see yourself in that moment. And you go, wow, I really want that, right? So picture in your mind a rocking chair with a cup of coffee and a blanket, and it's looking out at one of the most beautiful rolling mountain views, and there's a little bit of smoke coming through or over those mountains, and you're sitting there looking out at that. If you can take a photo that shows that experience, the person looking at that from the computer will picture themselves there, attach themselves there, emotionally connect to it, and pay whatever it costs.
Right.
And that's why photos are unbelievably important in the Airbnb world.
So it's not just photos, it's photos that capture you.
Exactly. I always say it's photos that evoke emotion. That's the easiest way to explain that. Yeah. Whatever that means to you, if you feel emotion looking at a photo, you've fallen in love, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Are we up to present day?
No. Airbnb property failed, turned around, figured out sorry if this is going too long, but
you're fine. Go ahead.
All right. So I realized that these Airbnb data, I like it. I'm helping some people on the side. I have this like small sort of consulting, like helping here and there, not really doing too much, but it was turning about $5,000 was like my best month, and so nothing crazy. But there was something there. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I want to hone in on this skill. I truly want to hone in on the skill. I got advice from somebody else that said, hey, if you want to start a business and doing something, you should work for somebody else doing that thing and then build a business out of it when you like build that skill. And so I go, okay, I'm going to find somebody that will hire me and let me just do Airbnb data all day, every day. Yeah. And so I ended up reaching out to a handful of different companies. One of them was this company called TechFester. And TechFester at the time it's an investment fund that buys short-term rentals. And they had like 5 properties. I pitched myself to them and they hired me without actually needing, they didn't have a role for me, but they're like, we're just going to bring you on. We're going to figure it out. And I ended up ultimately becoming their head of data and helping them identify every single market, every single property. I worked side by side with another guy who would take my data, implement it to the real world. And they are now the largest short-term rental investment fund in America. I helped them find 150 properties in a less than 2-year span. And to prove that those properties are profitable and that the properties are good and it's a profitable business, they stopped raising money from retail investors and went to an institutional fund who vetted them for like almost 18 plus months, going through every single nook and cranny of their finances. And that company has now committed $100 million to them over the next 3 to 5 years. And they've already placed in 10 million with them. So investment funds and people don't transfer that kind of money if there's not money being made, meaning that the data, the research, the process, the properties, the everything we did worked, right?
It was
And
the foundation that they built from. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So that I did that for 2 years, and that's the best thing in the world. And then I still have my company still has a contract with TechFester, so we are still their property finder. We have a contract to find another 300 plus properties over the next 3 to 5 years. But I broke my exclusivity contract with them and went out to figure out how I could find properties for everybody and anybody that needed the help to find one. Going back to kind of what you said there about helping people, right? So now we get to, this is like 2024, February 2024, we open up the doors to be able to find STRSearch, open up the doors. We actually open the doors by launching the 40-hour long course. So I did this big launch where I said, hey, here's I made it this big deal where it's like, I have this course, it's going to allow you to do all these things. And I go through all of it and I go, it's free. And I gave it away for free. And then I go, by the way, now you can hire us if you want to, right? You can hire me to help you find a property. And that was the launch of STRSearch. And yeah, so that's where we're at. Now we're at present day. So I've been doing that now for about 18 months or so, I think.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you come at this the way you do. And I hope the next time you see your dad, you just give him a big hug.
Oh yeah. I've made it certain to, I've ensured that I've told him these things.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought about them a lot. And so I told, like, just the other day, it was less than a month ago, I sat there and I was like, by the way, just so you know, the fact that you became a deacon to me is a gigantic deal at your age and you doing that and all that kind of stuff. And so like, I'm like, I use that as my motivation now. And so he was really happy about that. He actually, just give me 1 second here. It was my birthday, it was like 4 days ago. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. And he wrote me a card, and in it he just wrote, I pray your kids are as good to you as you are to me. I was like, that's a win for me and him. Cool, you know what I mean?
That is really awesome.
Yeah.
That is really awesome. Okay. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
That's the whole story. I think that's the whole story. We really got into it. This was a ton of fun, by the way. I got to say, I haven't been on a single podcast where you got to like walk through all these different things, but then have all these stories and questions in between and get us all the way to where we're at now. What I will say for any entrepreneurs listening is that you make the stories, like I tell the story like it's such a clean story. You know what I mean? You did this and did that, and like it's so simple and straightforward. Like there's a moment where the decision was made, but it's an absolute
lot more messy.
Yeah, of course. The whole thing's a mess, right? The whole thing's a mess. You never feel 100% confident. You feel like you're doing something right, then all of a sudden it goes wrong, but you just keep pushing. Like
welcome to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I love the quote. My favorite quote my favorite quote is the only way to lose is to quit, and I love that because it's so true when it comes to business. You can fail at business, but you can open up another business, right? And you can just keep going. So yeah, that's all I really want to say here to wrap up.
Do you mind if I share something with you?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
My favorite Henry Ford quote.
Okay.
If you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right.
Yep.
Pretty
Love
cool.
That one. Love that.
John Bianchi, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been an absolute romp. I've enjoyed every second of it. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com, and the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.